My name is Morgan Van Camp, and I will be talking you through modeling a preview map for the PLC group social studies. So a preview map is sort of like a movie preview. It gives you like the big, bold ideas that they're going to be learning as they read the chapter. So it's best to use a preview map on your chapter opener page, which is typically the first or second page of the chapter in your text. The purpose of a preview map is to have students kind of pull their prior knowledge on information as well as give them an understanding of what they should be looking for as we read the chapter. So your preview map on your page opener, so your chapter opener typically looks like this. And, it usually has your big bold header. It kind of tells you some main ideas that they might be coming across. Maybe it has like a little story like this one does, and then gives you just some like information about just a couple of things that they might be learning about. And so your preview map on your page opener is going to sort of look very similar. You're going to have your little circle that's labeled with the person in it. You're going to have your headers, your subheaders. And so we're really going to be turning these headers into questions that the students are going to answer as they read the text. So if I were modeling in my classroom, I would have my blank preview map on a projector or a document camera or some way that they could see what I'm writing and follow along as I'm writing it. So my first thing that I would write down would be, my first question I would ask I would say, what sticks out to you when looking at this page? So what sticks out to me first is this big bold title. And the big bold title says The Stirrings of Rebellion. So I would write down what were the stirrings of rebellion, because I don't know yet. So I would write down on my preview map for all my students to see what were the stirrings of rebellion. And so then I would say, looking back at the chapter opener, what's some information right at the top that you can see that kind of pulls your interest as well. So for me, I can see that we have the main idea, why it matters now in terms of names. So we're going to turn those again into questions on our preview maps, and we're going to say, what is the main idea? Why does it matter now? And what are the terms and names? And so you're going to write that down on your preview map for your students to see. And so I would probably have students write down what's already there. I would probably say something like, we can see this information already written down under these subheadings. So I'm going to give you 1 minute or 2 minutes, not a long time because they're very short, to go ahead and write down your answer to the question we just asked. So you're going to write down what the main idea is, why it mattered, and some terms and names that we're going to be looking for as we read this chapter. And so then I would be looking at our story that we have right here. So I would probably read the story out loud or have students volunteer to read the story. And then I would say, do we have any questions about that story? And so I'm looking for somebody to say, like, whose story is being told? That's a big question, like, who's telling the story? And I would say, whose personal voice is it? Is it coming, like, who was quoted, and then who was telling the quote? So on my preview map, I would write down whose story is being told and add a question mark. And then I write down whose personal voice is this and add a question mark. And so then I would have students answer those questions on their own preview maps. And so then I would say, we also have this picture right here, and the picture seems very important. So let's make a space for the picture on our preview maps. You don't necessarily have to draw the person. If it's a graph that you're looking at, I would suggest having your students draw like a rough example of the graph. But as far as pictures go, you really just want the gist that there's a picture there and you want to know who the picture is of. So I would have the students write that down. And so finally, I would have students look at the bottom subheader, right here, and it says, the colonies organized to resist Britain. And so I would probably have students, because we've gotten a little bit farther into this, I want to have kind of a guiding point. I would say, does anybody know what kind of question we're asking when we're looking at this header? And so I'm looking for students to say something along the lines of, how did the American colonies organize to resist Great Britain? And so I'd be like, that's fantastic. And so I would write down on my preview map, how did the American colonies organize to resist Britain? And I would say, I want you to read that small passage. It's like 1 paragraph long. We're going to give you 2 minutes, and I want you to answer your question. And then finally, we're going to say, so the final little tiny subheader that's in bold is the Stamp Act. And so I would say a question we could have about the Stamp Act is, what is the Stamp Act? So I would write down on my preview map, what was the Stamp Act? And then I would have, again, students take probably 2 to 3 minutes, it's a little bit longer of a paragraph, to read that and answer their own question. And so finally, I would take my students into groups of probably 2 or 3 and say, I want you to look at each other's preview maps, and I want you to answer the questions as best you can at this point. And I want you to talk about your answers and adjust your answers, add to them, change them if you feel like you wrote something wrong, that sort of thing. And so this preview map would then be used as they're reading the chapter to add some more information or to just kind of pique their thought process as they read information that answers the questions that we asked at the beginning. So that's essentially a preview map.